Well, hello and welcome. My name is Velma. You can connect with me at velmanolds.com. This is all about your leadership chat. What does that mean? You get to listen in on valuable insights from valuable leaders just like you. I want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And if this is of value to you, please share the nuggets that you're going to take away from all these great leaders. Please give a big welcome to my special guest and your valuable leader, Amanda Kaiser. Amanda, welcome to your leadership chat.
Thanks so much, Velma. I'm so delighted to be talking with you today.
Well, thank you. We talk all the time through either messages or emails, and then once in a while we have enough time on calendars that we get together. But I'm super excited that you want to be on today, and I'm excited for all the listeners to get to meet you and get to learn a little bit more about you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's kick things off. Amanda, I always ask if you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am a author and keynote speaker specifically around the term engagement. So I focus on member engagement for associations and communities and attendee engagement for events and user engagement for websites. So I kind of, cover the world of engagement.
Oh, wow, that is so cool. And where are you calling in from? So tell folks where you're out of.
Yeah, I'm at home right now, and I got my two little mascots right there,
Yeah.
Robin and Bean. So I'm at home, and I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania, so about an hour and a half west of Manhattan and an hour and a half north of Philadelphia. I'm kind of up in farmland.
Okay, so Amanda, I know if I'm curious, and we've talked, and I've never really asked this question, and I'm sure that folks that are listening are wondering, how did you get into engagement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it took me a while, actually. So I found it. So let's see. Let me give you kind of the squiggly career. I started out as a brand manager at Crayola and kind of worked my way up until I was helping to guide the Crayola brand, which was super cool. And what I didn't know at the time is I was getting a first-hand lesson in consumer engagement. And
Mm.
from Crayola, I went to an advertising agency, and then I plopped into the world of associations. So I worked for the National Association of Colleges and Employers.
Hmm.
Very cool association. I loved the ethos. I loved association land.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was the director of marketing, and I got to do a lot of qualitative research, and I loved it. I loved talking to our members on the phone and asking them questions and finding out about their careers and their lives and their goals and challenges and all that. And so after NACE, I turned around and opened up a qualitative research agency essentially. And through that time, I got a chance to talk to about 477 members.
Yeah. Just
And
477 and
yeah, yeah,
counting.
yeah, yeah.
I love it.
477 members and counting, I should say.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because their associations were trade associations and professional associations. And, some of them were CEOs and some of them were scientists and engineers and, journalists. And so all of these very different kind of responsibility levels and different different professions, different industries, and what I kept hearing was a lot of the same thing.
Mm.
What I didn't realize, I think, at the time was all of the research was coming back to engagement. Why people engaged and why they didn't, and what the barriers were.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking about this before you pressed record. That whole sense of belonging.
Yep.
How do you grow into that sense of belonging?
Yeah.
And so most of my research was custom research, and I felt like, oh, this is just too good to keep to myself. And
Yeah.
so during the COVID times, I decided to try my hand at more thought leadering, and I wrote a book, and now I'm out there keynoting and doing lots of workshops about engagement.
Awesome. Awesome. And I felt it was really important to kind of give that backstory because, where you said, talk about engagement, but it didn't just like fall in your lap. You have a lot of history in doing the work towards how to build engagement and learn about what people are looking for in the private world and public companies as well as in the association world. So it gives a lot of context to why you feel so passionate about it, that you wrote the book, which is awesome. I'm excited. So what I usually do on the show is I want to have leaders share about people in their life, one or two people that they would say, if it wasn't for this person, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I call that person the valuable leader. And so I would love for you to share, Amanda, who is a valuable leader in your life and why would you say that about them?
You know, I can't even narrow it down to one or two. I have so many fantastic friends, and I feel like I'm always trying to pull the very best from all of them.
Yeah,
And this probably started, I think it was like, I'm going to get the timing wrong, but I want to guess that it was like 20, 25 years ago, when I was at the start of my career. My very best friend at the time, Meredith, and I were talking,
uh-huh.
and she said something that just blew my mind. She said, "I'm an introvert," and I said, "Oh my gosh, how could that be? Because you are the most personable, outgoing, person I've ever met in my entire life. You
Sure.
love people. What's going on there?" And she said, in my teens, I realized that people who seemed to be extroverts
Mhm.
did better in life. And so I tried to appear as if I'm an extrovert, even though I'm an introvert. And
Wow.
I thought that was fascinating. It was kind of like the first time that I sort of glommed onto the notion that your thoughts might not necessarily define you. Like you
Mhm.
can become anything you want to be.
Mm.
And so ever since then, I've been watching people that I encounter, and especially my friends, because you spend so much time with your
Yeah.
friends, and I watch how lovely and engaging and wonderful they are. And I've been trying to figure out like how to adapt that into my own life. So just like a couple of examples. I'm friends with Ariana Riak, and she is one of the most like impossibly optimistic people I have ever met in my life. And I love it. It's like it's
Yeah.
super contagious.
Yes.
And having worked with her on a few really big, really hard projects, I
Mhm.
think it was her optimism that really helped us move like these huge mountains.
Yeah.
And so that's amazing. I've got another friend, Stephanie, and Stephanie, oh gosh, Stephanie's tone and her use of words they're just, I don't know, like talking or reading Stephanie's texts or emails or getting a phone call from her. It's like getting a warm hug, right? It's just
Oh,
the
wow.
words she uses.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm trying to write an email where I'm trying to make it like super conversational and super warm, I'll sometimes think to myself, how would Stephanie say this? And
Mhm.
then I'll try to write as if I'm her. So I
Oh,
don't know. I could probably go through my, list of like 10 of my very best friends and say,
yeah.
what I totally admire about each of them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And not only do I love the fact that, you have several that you've talked about, which one, the positivity is just contagious. It's oozing off the pages and you grab it. And then the
Yep.
next one and is through just the power of their words and how what an impact. And love the little phrase how you coined it. It's like a warm hug. Yeah, that's what valuable leaders do for you, but what you did was you took it a step further and you said, okay, I'm watching them and I'm learning from them. And that's the researcher in you, observing. But then you're saying, how do I apply that good thing to my life to be a better leader, myself, to be a better person. So that's just awesome. I love that. And what two great examples. Yeah, I'd love to know more. You got, but I know time is important here, and I want to respect that with you. So my second question is, you know this about what you value and what you're getting from others, those that are close to you, your circle of friends that are making such an impact in your life that you're adopting some of their thoughts and how they approach different ways of writing and so forth. How does Amanda pay it forward? How do you impact others so that they could be valuable leaders?
So one of the things that I talk about is so when I'm keynoting, I often share with my audience this idea of my own personal homework, and it works for me, and for whatever it's worth, I hope it works for other people. But
Okay.
so often I'm talking about engagement, but I think this applies to leadership. So when I am out and about in my daily life, when I'm going to the post office and the grocery store or a restaurant, or I'm traveling, or I'm on the phone like this, or a Zoom call, talking with somebody like you, if when I have a particularly engaging experience,
Mhm.
like you said, the researcher in me will sort of record that down. And then later on, I'll think about it and I'll try to re engineer what happened there to make that experience really engaging. And
Yeah.
I'll figure out if I can adapt it back to my own personal use and
Mhm.
my personal life or in my professional life. Or maybe I'll use it as fodder for my keynotes or blogs or workshops or something like that to say, hey, amazingly enough, the US Post Office is doing this thing, which maybe would work for associations. So I
Yeah.
love, going out and finding things in, I don't know, kind of like non-congruent areas and trying
Sure.
to pull it back to my own context or our context.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing works with leadership, right? Like we're encountering great leaders all the time. And so we can watch them and see what they're doing. And I think the trick is not just to watch them for the idea, but then to re-engineer
Mhm.
what it is that made that work and then see if we can adapt it back.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a powerful gift that you want to offer, and especially in association world, I come from that background as well with you, and so I share the passion of wanting to help the associations themselves with their members, but also from a leadership perspective, because I've this has been such a trying and challenging time, not just for associations in general and for organizations in general, but for the leaders that have been very, very successful running their associations for a very long time, right? Long tenure, staff is loyal and dedicated. And now there's a new need to have this gift, like you're talking about, to give them a shift in their perspective of how can they adapt some things to modify the way that they are doing business to enhance their leadership and their employee engagement as well as their member engagement. Yeah,
Yeah, you're so right. Our environment has changed so much, and
yeah,
I don't think COVID was the catalyst, but it definitely spurred us on
accelerated.
faster.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, COVID was an accelerant that
yeah,
got us to where we are, and so it feels like a massive shift. But we were heading there either way. No matter how we got here,
right.
one of the things that I hear from so many of my audiences when I talk about what's changed, why are we suddenly in a position where we need to change, what's going on, and people always say it's time, and I totally get that, and I
Yep,
bet you get that as well. There is during the pandemic there was some days that sort of lasted forever, and those days are gone.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever been busier, and
right.
everybody I talk to feels like they're in the same boat. And so it's not that people have bad intentions. I think we're just spread so thin.
Yeah, yeah. And with so much newness of new ways of operating and new ways of leading, I mean, now the leader has to be the coach because the perspective is how to create that sense of belonging for our members, specifically in the association. But I also say, in order for that to happen with your members, for members to want to engage and to want to belong to your organization, your employees is your most competitive, that's your competitive advantage. And so how do you get team members to be stronger together and leaders to become more valuable in their perspective of that internal sense of belonging, which will then spill out
Mhm.
externally for members as well?
Love it. Yes.
Hands down. Okay, so This my next question is around a big takeaway, and what the feedback I get from listeners is, man, I'm just waiting for what's the big takeaway for me. And we live in that world, right? Selfie, and we're like, okay, so what's in it for me? I know Amanda's got some great valuable leaders, and she's providing great value as a gift to pay it forward. Now let's talk about me. So Amanda, think about what would be one big takeaway that you would want to give to listeners to help them become more valuable as leaders in their personal and professional life. What would you share with them?
So I am on a really big mission to make everybody CEOs. And now your listeners might already be CEOs or executive directors, and they might be saying, so how does this apply to me? But let me tell you what CEO means to me. And
Yeah,
for me, CEO means Chief Experience Officer. And
yeah.
I think this focus on experiences is kind of the cure to a lot of our problems. It's the thing that breaks through um, getting people's attention when they don't have a lot of time. It helps spur engagement and belonging and all of those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
let me kind of give you just one example of how experiences can help people, or focus on experiences can help people. So I've been thinking about your podcast and thinking about leadership, and in my mind kind of thinking about, okay, so what is one of the most important things in leadership? And I think that's really good communication.
Yeah.
And so I've got this kind of model around experiences that's sort of twofold. So the first is, um, when you think about communication, there's the two parts, and the two parts are the what we want to say. It's the words we use. It's the meaning, if you will.
Hmm.
The second part is how we say it, and
Yeah.
that's the experience. And so when you think about how you say it, it's your tone and your inflection, and if you're doing written words, it's the emojis you use, and capitals and hashtags and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of ways to say it. And so I'll give you an example. You can, if you're just saying the words, you could say something like, you did a good job. But if you add the experience part to it,
Yeah.
you could say, you did a good job,
Yeah.
right? And that's really different.
Yeah.
And so from my research, and now I'm saying my research, and I'm going to give you a statistic which is not statistically accurate, but what I found talking with all of these people is that when we're writing, or when we're creating a product or creating a service,
Yeah.
we focus 95% of our time and effort on what we want to say, or what the product is or what the value is.
Yeah.
But our reader or listener or customer
Hmm.
is probably 95% focused on the experience.
Yeah.
And so there's a gap here, right?
Hmm.
People are picking up the meaning of our words from that tonal inflections that we're using. They're
Yeah.
they're they're
Yeah.
kind of hearing, but it shifts so much with
Hmm.
how we're expressing them.
Yeah.
And so I think, you asked for my big takeaway, and let me try to circle back around, because I feel like I just dumped a bunch of words
No,
on
no, I
you and
got a
your
takeaway.
listeners. So I think it is, as leaders come to every single interaction and every single decision,
Yeah.
and come just not thinking about, what is it we want them to know, but also thinking about how do we want them to feel.
Yeah.
And when we start asking ourselves that question, how do we want our email listeners to feel, our readers to feel? How do we want people to feel when they're reading our blogs or articles?
Yeah.
Or, how do we want new members to feel when they're reading our emails? All of that kind of stuff. Or how do we want our staff to feel when we're talking to them?
Sure.
If we kind of think about that in advance of trying to communicate, we'll sort of subconsciously add in that experiential part,
Yeah.
and I think that will make our communication so much better.
Oh, wow. And big takeaway, because it is experience that matters. I mean, you go for an interview and the first thing they want to know is what's your experience, right? What do you bring to the table? But I also think that how you tied in communication, because that's the number one power skill that not just leaders, but everyone in an organization, personally and professionally, struggle with. And that's the number one strength that every one of us needs, because we need to connect with one another. You can't create that engagement if you can't communicate a sense of belonging, where people say, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel valued, so I belong there. Whether they're your employee or whether they're your member in this case, or customer, I want to do business because they make me feel like they care enough about me. That's that whole experience. And you and I know, and others and the listeners know, you go to and buy from businesses where you feel that sense of, this is such a great experience, right? It's the experience of it all. So I think that's a huge takeaway, leveraging your communication to create that kind of experience, where people want to belong. They feel like you care enough about them, and it's a great experience, and they're going to tell others. That's huge.
Right.
It's huge. Wow, that's powerful. So Amanda, I could talk to you, and me, because we share so many other things, but I would love for you to share with the listeners, how can they learn more about Amanda, what you're doing, and, find the book? How would we get in touch with you? Share a little bit more, please.
Yeah, sure. So let me hold up the book. So
Yeah.
so you can find the book anywhere online books are sold. So Elevating Engagement, you can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of that good stuff. And you can find me at amandaleekaiser.com. So it's Amanda, and my middle name is Lea. It's pronounced Lee, like
Okay.
Lee, but it's actually Lea.
Right.
And Kaiser is kind of like the role .com. Or you could just type Amanda Lee Kaiser into search and you'll find me as well. So my website has newsletter, blog post, a lot of free research, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been on several podcasts, so there's more learnings that they can get from them as well. And I appreciate you so much. You stepped out a little bit out of the norm to jump on here with me for your leadership chat. And it's because I respect you as a leader and what you're doing in your work, and a fellow colleague serving the association world. I just want to thank you so much for being willing to come on your leadership chat.
Thank you so much, Velma, for the opportunity. And it's just always wonderful to talk with you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's like a whole new experience.
That's right.
Hey, thanks so much for watching another episode of Your Leadership Chat. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button here and tap that bell icon so that you never miss another episode. I hope too that you'll give us a thumbs up on the video for a like. And then if you feel led, please share the video with those who need to see it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Your Leadership Chat. Bye for now.